A celebrity is filming by the Yellow River and accidentally falls into the raging water. The director is willing to pay $1 million for you to jump in and save them. As a corpse retriever of the Yellow River, you are fully capable of rescuing them, but instead of helping, you let the popular celebrity drown and then demand $3 million to help recover the body. This is because, with your yin-yang eyes, you see a dark cloud of karma hanging over the celebrity, their life palace shrouded in deathly end or something that only happens to those who have committed grave offenses against the heavens. Clearly, this celebrity is not worth saving. If you forcibly save him, not only will you fail to accumulate any merit, but you may even attract misfortune. On the contrary, it would even bring disaster upon yourself. However, you didn't expect that your refusal to save the drowning person and your demand for money to retrieve the corpse would be broadcast live by an unknown internet celebrity. Instantly, you are condemned by 300 million netizens across the internet for being cold-blooded, and the rabid fans of the celebrity even threaten to come after you in real life. At this moment, you watch as the celebrity drowns for their sins under the will of heaven, and only then do you slowly announce that retrieving the body will cost $2 million. As soon as you say this, the people around you are in an uproar, their faces filled with disbelief. Just now, when $1 million was offered to save a living person, you stood by and did nothing, but now you're asking $2 million to recover a corpse. This is simply outrageous. Are you crazy for money? You actually dare to ask for $2 million. It's bad enough you refuse to save someone, but now that they're dead, you're still trying to extort money. How can you be so heartless? Faced with everyone's accusations, you remain calm and indifferent, simply saying, life and death are determined by fate. Getting paid for work is just the rule. This offhand remark sounds especially harsh to those listening, instantly reigniting their anger, but you completely ignore their attacks. If it weren't for the fact that this corpse carries such heavy evil energy and would bring disaster to the Yellow River if left in the water, it might even turn into a zombie. You wouldn't have bothered to take this job at all, just to avoid being affected by the corpse's karmic and malevolent aura. Naturally, the price is not the same as for an ordinary person. At this moment, the director looks worn out and world-weary. Fine, $2 million it is. Just help me retrieve the body. Although he says this, he's still unwilling to accept it. If only this person had said earlier that he wanted $2 million, at least the person wouldn't have died. Now, he has no other choice. He never expected something like this to happen while shooting a film. He can already imagine the storm of public outrage outside. He failed to protect the person, and if he can't even secure the body now, he's afraid he'll be drowned by the criticism from fans and netizens. But what he doesn't know is, even if he had offered you $2 million right from the start, you still wouldn't have gone down to save the person. Rules are rules. Only after the terms were settled did you untie the bamboo raft and push off. With a single thrust of the bamboo pole, you were 100 meters away in the blink of an eye. But in the eyes of those around you, this scene only confirmed their suspicions. You let someone die just to get more money. The streamer Shang Xian was even more certain, saying, how greedy, running off so quickly as soon as you saw the money. To think you'd ignore a human life for money, that's just cold-blooded to the extreme. These words were like adding fuel to the fire. The netizens in the live stream and some people on the shore all had their emotions stirred up. But soon, everyone realized something was off. The reason no one had dared to go into the water to save the person earlier was precisely because the river was extremely turbulent. Under such conditions, jumping in to save someone was nothing but wishful thinking. Although you had a bamboo raft, everyone thought you would proceed with extreme caution, since compared to a fishing boat, a bamboo raft is much harder to maneuver. However, to everyone's surprise, you didn't seem the least bit nervous. You casually pushed the bamboo pole, drifting on the river's surface, completely steady no matter how the current battered you. At the same time, you gradually approached the center of the Yellow River. By now, Wei Haoqian's body was nowhere to be seen on the water. But for someone like you, who possesses the yin-yang eyes, this was hardly a difficult problem. At this moment, you could clearly see that not only was the baleful energy around the corpse intensifying, but there were also things in the water trying to seize the opportunity to possess it. If left unchecked, there would be only two possible outcomes. Either the body would be possessed by a water ghost, or it would be transformed into a zombie by the baleful energy, both extremely dangerous scenarios. As the saying goes, take someone's money, dispel their disaster. After reaching the designated area of the river, you slowly took out a pitch-black rope from beneath your clothes. The people on the shore found this scene rather strange, as the rope inexplicably gave off an ominous feeling. At this moment, someone on the shore whispered, he's not planning to tie the rope to himself and jump in, is he? Although they disapproved of you, the detective, for refusing to save someone in distress, this approach seemed far too dangerous. Why not just wait for the rescue team? What if another life is lost? Someone said. Immediately, another person retorted, so what if he's taking a risk after taking the money? Is $2 million that easy to earn? Besides, he's doing it of his own free will, isn't he? As they spoke, everyone saw you suddenly toss the rope in your hand into the river, then calmly stand atop the bamboo raft. He made no further moves. This whole sequence of actions left everyone completely baffled. What was he doing? Wasn't he supposed to retrieve the body? Why wasn't he doing anything? They'd hired him to recover the corpse, not to go fishing. What was he up to? If he didn't hurry up and retrieve the body, it would soon be lost for good. While everyone was chattering and speculating, you suddenly felt a weight on the rope in your hand, as if something had gotten caught on it. Yet you showed no sign of panic, as if everything was unfolding just as you had expected. In fact, the rope in your hand was no ordinary hemp rope. The rope was pitch black because it was woven from the hair of a black dog, specifically crafted as a corpse-binding cord for retrieving bodies. At this moment, the surface of the Yellow River was murky, making it impossible to see what was happening below or what was caught on the end of the rope. But just then, you suddenly exerted your strength, gripping the rope tightly and pulling it up quickly. Gradually, it seemed as if something below was struggling, churning up waves that grew more and more intense. Everyone on the shore stared in shock at this scene, all secretly wondering, could it be that this man had managed to snare the corpse with the rope? But if so, why would the corpse be struggling? Just as everyone was puzzled, the streamer Shang Xian suddenly spoke up excitedly, suggesting, could it be that Wei Haoqian isn't dead? Maybe he's still alive? In truth, most people didn't really believe what she said, since Wei Haoqian had been underwater for quite a while, long enough for anyone to suffocate. But aside from that, no one could think of any other explanation for what was happening. Surely it couldn't be that they'd actually hooked a giant fish. Shang Xian's words gave a glimmer of hope to the fans both on the shore and in the livestream chat, and they all began praying for their idol, hoping that Wei Haoqian would be lucky enough to survive. As everyone held their breath in anticipation, you took a slight step back on the bamboo raft. Then, with a sudden burst of strength in both arms, you yanked the taut rope up, flinging whatever was attached to the other end onto the bamboo raft. It was clear to see that what was tied to the rope was none other than the corpse of the celebrity Wei Haoqian. At this moment, his body was deathly pale and completely motionless, clearly no longer breathing. He didn't even look like someone who had just died, but rather like a person who had been dead for 2.5 days. Many fans couldn't bear the shock of this scene, and fainted on the spot. Witnessing this, the group of people who had rushed downstream with the old man wore expressions of utter astonishment on their faces. Is this old man really a corpse retriever? Not only did he cross the most dangerous stretch of the Yellow River with just a bamboo raft, but he also managed to haul up the corpse so easily. This was almost exactly as he had described before, but the old man merely stroked his beard without saying a word. However, if you looked closely, you could see that his cloudy eyes were now filled with excitement. There was no doubt about Iton the Yellow River. Only a corpse retriever could possess such skills. But this corpse retriever was much younger than he had imagined, and his appearance didn't match either. According to the stories passed down by the older generation, corpse retrievers usually looked fierce and intimidating, as only such a presence could suppress certain evil spirits. It seems that not all the rumors are true, at least this part isn't. At this moment, you slowly steered the bamboo raft toward the shore. Seeing this, the crew hurried over to help lift the corpse ashore. Earlier, there were still some people who hadn't given up and wanted to confirm whether Wei Haodian was really dead, but after witnessing this scene, they gave up on the idea. At this point, the director looked utterly dejected. He didn't say anything, just silently handed you 2 bank cards. There was exactly 2 million in them, and no password was needed. You nodded and accepted them. Just as you were about to leave on your bamboo raft, the streamer Shang Xian suddenly rushed over, holding her phone high, filled with righteous indignation. You really dare to take the money? You look decent enough, why do this? If you can't make money, you resort to extortion instead. Don't you feel guilty taking this money? Aren't you afraid of having nightmares at night? You looked up at her face. The dark aura from the hard candy was growing thicker, even more so than what you'd seen on Wei Haodian's face earlier. Shangshan, feeling your gaze, couldn't help but feel a chill in her heart. What are you looking at, she thought. After all, what you did wasn't exactly honorable, and saying something after taking 2 million shouldn't be a big deal. Plus, she could use this opportunity to boost her popularity in a live stream. But unexpectedly, you suddenly spoke up. You'd better worry about yourself. Riding on the popularity of the dead isn't as easy as you think. This remark hit the streamer Shang Xian right where it hurt, but he quickly composed himself. He wanted to say something more, but you didn't give him the chance. You glanced at the director nearby and said in a low voice, "You'd better cremate the body as soon as possible. This person committed many misdeeds in life, and is highly susceptible to absorbing evil energy, which could easily lead to corpse transformation. At the very least, there's a risk of the body reanimating." Everyone present was stunned by your words. Before they could react, you pushed off on your bamboo raft and left. After you were gone, both the live stream viewers and those who stayed behind were left completely baffled. What does corpse transformation even mean? Is this person just spouting nonsense about zombies and reanimated corpses? Who are you trying to scare? None of them took your words seriously. In fact, they were even a bit dismissive. At that moment, however, the old man by the shore suddenly spoke up. It's said that those who committed grave crimes in life will carry karmic burdens on their bodies. The more serious the crime, the heavier the burden. To put it simply, he was a criminal who should have been executed, responsible for the deaths of many innocent people. Now karma has come full circle, and he's facing retribution. I advise you all to do as he said. With that, the old man clasped his hands behind his back and slowly walked out of the crowd. He was now utterly convinced of your identity as a corpse retriever. Naturally, he believed what you said, but his words were like a bomb thrown into the crowd. Are you kidding? Hao Qin is so kind, how could he possibly have committed a crime? When he was alive, he made all kinds of donations, giving away 90% of his fortune. That's right, everyone knows that Wei Hao Qin's character was a breath of fresh air in the entertainment industry, and he was especially fond of charity work when he was alive. How could someone say such terrible things? He's already dead, and yet people are still slandering Hao Qin. Clearly, this person just stood by and did nothing to help. He's completely turning things upside down. Anyone who knows anything about Wei Hao Qin knows that he was a man of impeccable character, let alone ever doing anything illegal or immoral. In his daily life, he didn't even smoke or drink, and he was never in the headlines because of his private life. Even the most notorious paparazzi in the entertainment industry couldn't dig up any dirt on him. He was completely focused on acting and honing his craft. It's precisely because of this that he was able to win the affection of so many people. Gentle and refined are the words most often used by netizens to describe him. He even established a foundation to help many families in need. How could someone so earnest and kind possibly be a ruthless criminal? That's why no one believes the claim that Wei Hao Qin was a criminal. Very soon, it wasn't just the live stream. The internet was in an uproar as well. Headlines about Wei Hao Qin's death were everywhere. Titles like Wei Hao Qin drowns on set, confirmed dead, no rescue attempt made while alive, demanded $1 million after death to retrieve the body flooded in. Related topics instantly dominated the trending searches, and the internet was awash with news. While some on-site videos were also spreading wildly online. With the hype from certain marketing accounts, the situation escalated rapidly in a short period of time. Many people simply couldn't believe Itho could such a young and talented star be gone just like that. Meanwhile, elsewhere, a slender woman with porcelain skin, rosy lips, and white teeth was lounging lazily in a cafe, her beautiful eyes gazing at the surging yellow river not far away. At that moment, a man dressed in a suit and covered head to toe in designer brands walked over. "Miss, do you mind if I sit here?" This kind of line is usually the start of a pickup attempt, and she was already vaguely prepared to let him sit down after all. She'd been sitting here alone for quite some time, and it didn't seem like she had any company. But unexpectedly, the man suddenly said, "Sorry. I'm waiting for someone." Such a clear rejection made the man's expression freeze instant. He awkwardly muttered an apology and returned to his original seat. His companion immediately burst out laughing, clearly taking pleasure in his misfortune. "I told you your usual tricks wouldn't work. You can tell at a glance that this woman isn't one of those easy-to-catch girls." The man in the suit shot his companion a fierce glare, then picked up his cup and took a sip of coffee without saying anything, though his gaze still lingered on the woman. Seeing that he seemed to be taking it a bit seriously, his companion found it even more amusing. "Even you can't get her attention. I'm actually a bit curious about what the person he's waiting for looks like." Then again, maybe it was just an excuse to turn you down, because there was some distance between them. Guo Shushu didn't hear what they were saying, but she really was waiting for someone. Guo Shushu glanced at the time. Since she didn't have anything else to do, she had arrived earlier than the agreed time. At this moment, her feelings were a bit complicated, mainly because the person she was about to meet was rather special. He was her blind date. This was actually her first time going on a blind date. Guo Shushu had actually been forced to come by her family, and up until now, she didn't even have the other person's contact information. She didn't even know what the other person looked like. All she knew was his name. That was because this meeting had been entirely arranged by her family. Her grandmother had praised the guy to the skies, which made her a bit curious after all. Her grandmother's standards for her future partner were notoriously strict. But just as Guo Shushu was lost in thought, her phone on the table suddenly rang. "Shushu, have you seen him yet? How is he? Isn't he a great match? Grandma just knows you'll like him." On the other end of the line came a slightly older voice, tinged with excitement and a hint of teasing. Her grandmother's teasing tone made Huo Shushu blush. She replied playfully, "Grandma, it's not even the agreed time yet. We haven't met each other." Hearing that the two young people hadn't met yet, old Madame Guo couldn't help but sound a little disappointed. Huo Shushu, however, paid no mind to her grandmother's letdown. Changing the subject, she said, "Grandma, I've already come here for the meeting. Shouldn't you tell me something?" Old Madame Guo instinctively asked, "What is it? For example, what does my blind date do?" Huo Shushu thought that at this point her grandmother would finally tell her, but to her surprise, her grandmother still dodged the question. "You can just ask him yourself when he arrives, can't you? Don't worry, I'm your real grandmother. Would I ever set you up for trouble? You two are absolutely perfect for each other." With that, she hurriedly hung up the phone. At this, Huo Shushu let out a helpless sigh and muttered quietly, "There's just no dealing with her." Then, she couldn't help but fall into deep thought. With her grandmother being so secretive, what exactly did her blind date do? Just as Huo Shushu was lost in thought, the door to the cafe was suddenly pushed open, and the crisp sound of a wind chime rang out. Huo Shushu instinctively looked up toward the entrance, only to see a man in a black hoodie appear at the door. The man's long, narrow phoenix eyes swept around the room, quickly locking onto a particular spot. The moment their gazes met, Huo Shushu was momentarily stunned, a flash of shock passing through her eyes. Could this man really be her blind date? While she was still surprised, the man had already started walking toward her. Meeting Huo Shushu's eyes, you said in a deep voice, "Sorry I'm late. Something came up on the way and delayed me. I'm Dekong." Because the old lady had previously described her blind date to you, you immediately recognized Huo Shushu as your date. Upon hearing this, Huo Shushu gave a charming smile and reached out her hand. "It's alright, I was the one who came to find you. I'm your blind date, Huo Shushu." You lightly shook Huo Shushu's hand. As with most blind dates, the atmosphere was a bit awkward at first, so the two of you started with some small talk. To outsiders, however, the sight of such a handsome man and beautiful woman sitting together was especially pleasing to the eye. Seeing this, the man in the suit from earlier couldn't help but feel a bit disappointed. At that moment, his companion patted him on the shoulder and comforted him, saying, "You'd better give up. Just based on his looks and that cool, aloof temperament, if I were a woman, I'd choose him too." That remark was like a stab straight to the suited man's heart. The man in the suit shot his companion a glare, then got up and left. Meanwhile, while you and Huo Shushu were leisurely getting to know each other at the cafe, the internet was already in an uproar over the issue of female shoes and the asking games. After all, Wei Haotian was one of the more popular celebrities at the moment, so the impact of his unexpected death was easy to imagine. The director urgently called a press conference. Who could have thought that just a few hours ago, he was still filming, and now not only is the lead actor gone, but the director himself is also being bombarded with criticism. However, he refused to take the blame for causing someone's death, insisting that Wei Haotian brought it upon himself. In fact, he even paid 2 million out of his own pocket, otherwise there wouldn't even have been a complete body lab. Now, his movie couldn't be filmed anymore if it was going to compensate him for his losses. The director immediately felt a wave of frustration. This was a disaster that had come out of nowhere. As Wei Haotian's body was transported back to the capital, news about him dominated all the major news sections. People were saying that the person who fished him out had gone too far. How was this any different from murder? Some die-hard fans simply couldn't accept the fact that their idol had passed away, so they all turned their anger towards you. If it weren't for his cold indifference and refusal to help, my Wei Haotian wouldn't have died. Some even tried to use their connections to dox you. If it weren't for him, Haotian wouldn't have been in trouble at all. He stood by and did nothing, and even tried to extort money. Why isn't someone like that being arrested? Some fans who considered themselves righteous shouted, "I want him to experience the same despair Haotian felt. Count me in, me too." Many people joined the ranks of those cyberbullying you, and by this point, they had completely lost all sense of reason. Meanwhile, the streamer Shang Xian was also condemning you online. After soothing his fans a bit, he finally ended his live stream. Yet, the moment the screen went dark, the grief on his face vanished instantly, replaced by an eager and excited look. He immediately opened the live stream back end to check his earnings. In the past, no matter how hard he worked during his streams, he never made much money in a day, at most, around 1,000 yuan. Although he had mentally prepared himself that this live stream would bring in a decent profit, he was still pleasantly surprised the moment he saw the numbers. It was actually 100,000 yuan. He couldn't help but smile. After all, these celebrity fans are so easy to fool. All he had to do was put on a little act, and they were willing to pay up. He didn't feel there was anything wrong with taking this money after all. He had put effort into his performance. Who would have guessed that he wasn't even a fan of Wei Haotian in the first place? He was just a passerby. In fact, he had come here to meet someone, and as he glanced at the time, he suddenly exclaimed, "Oh no, I'm late. This unexpected incident had delayed him quite a bit, so he hurried off to the agreed meeting place. Meanwhile, you and Huo Shushu were still unaware that a storm was brewing online and growing ever more intense. After chatting for a while, Shushu felt fairly satisfied with this blind date at the very least. You could hold a conversation. Since you were both adults, Huo Shushu didn't beat around the bush and spoke directly. "What do you think of me? If you think I'm okay, can we start out as friends first?" At this point, you also felt the timing was about right, so you replied, "I think I should introduce my profession first. If you don't mind, we can start as friends. And as for whether we can become a couple in the future, let's leave that up to fate." Hearing this, a look of confusion appeared on Huo Shushu's face. She couldn't quite imagine what kind of job would make you say something like that, but she didn't voice her doubts. Under Huo Shushu's gaze, you slowly began. "My job is rather unusual. I'm a corpse retriever from the Yellow River." You didn't intend to hide it. Being a corpse retriever was something you'd have to mention sooner or later. After all, you're here for a blind date, and you feel that being honest is necessary. However, most people find it hard to accept this profession. No one wants to be with someone who deals with corpses all day. That's exactly why most corpse retrievers are destined to be alone. You originally thought Huo Shushu would react the same way, get scared, and leave immediately. But to your surprise, Huo Shushu suddenly smiled and said, "What a coincidence. No wonder we have such a connection. We're both dealing with the same kind of thing. Because 100 years ago, the Huo family was actually a family of tomb raiders." Hearing this, you were stunned for a moment. Tomb raiders. You never expected your blind date to be a tomb raider. You didn't really doubt what she said. In fact, you even thought that maybe the old Taoist insisted on setting you up with her for this very reason. After all, just as Huo Shushu said, both professions deal with the same thing. Corpse, so you actually have something in common. Watching you, Huo Shushu couldn't help but secretly laugh to herself. What's with this unexpectedly cute contrast in his personality? In reality, Huo Shushu didn't take your words seriously at all, nor did she believe them. She just thought you were joking with her, since she had at least heard of corpse retrievers as a profession. The profession has been extinct for hundreds of years, so could it possibly still exist now? Still, there was a mix of truth and falsehood in what he said. It was true that the Huo family used to be a family of tomb raiders, but now they were almost completely legitimate. She couldn't tell whether you were trying to reject her with this story, or just joking around. So Huo Shushu pressed further. "Since we seem to have such a fateful connection, why don't we start as friends? As for what happens in the future, let's leave it to fate and how we feel. Is that okay?" Hearing this, you reached out your hand again and said with a smile, "It's nice to meet you." After that, the two of you exchanged contact information. Since it was already late, you both decided to head home separately. Originally, you intended to escort Huo Shushu home, but she refused. "It's fine. My driver will be here to pick me up soon. But it's getting late for you. Why don't I have someone drive you back?" During your earlier conversation, she had learned that you seemed to live quite far from here, but she didn't expect you to shake your head and say, "It's alright. It won't take me long if I take the waterway." Hearing this, Huo Shushu was momentarily stunned. The only waterway she could think of nearby was the Yellow River, not far from her. The waters in this area were notoriously dangerous. Suddenly, she realized something and exclaimed in disbelief. So you came here by waterway as well? Compared to the astonished Huo Shushu, you remained much more composed. Yes, although Huo Shushu could hardly believe it when she looked at your face, the words of doubt that had reached her lips were swallowed back down. Because of what you said, Huo Shushu insisted on escorting you to the riverside. Seeing that Huo Shushu had already informed her driver to pick her up at the Yellow River bank, you didn't argue further. Instead, you casually handed Huo Shushu a protective talisman, a small token for your first meeting, perhaps. After saying this, you gave a faint smile and then walked ahead. Huo Shushu looked at the talisman in her hand, then glanced at your departing figure. She couldn't shake the feeling that things were starting to take a strange turn. But she didn't think much of it and hurried to catch up with you. Since the cafe wasn't far from the Yellow River, you both strolled over and arrived within a few minutes. When you saw that the driver who had come to pick up Huo Shushu had arrived, you said to her in a deep voice, "Let's stop here. You should head back early and stay safe." Although the sound of the waves around was loud, Huo Shushu inexplicably felt that your figure was incredibly clear, as if you were speaking right next to her ear, your voice low and magnetic. Huo Shushu's ears instantly turned red, but when she snapped out of it, she saw you walking step by step, getting closer and closer to the riverbank. Huo Shushu immediately became nervous. Could he actually be serious? By now, night had fallen, and the wide river was pitch black. There wasn't a single fishing boat in sight, and even large vessels didn't dare approach. She couldn't figure out how you planned to leave. Just then, taking advantage of the darkness, you took a bamboo raft and other items out of your backpack. A white lantern at the front of the raft cast a cool, faint glow. When Huo Shushu turned around, what she saw was you, draped in a rain cape, standing atop the bamboo raft. Was he really planning to use the raft to go back? That was far too dangerous. Huo Shushu hurried forward a few steps, wanting to stop you. "Come down, it's too dangerous." But because of the roaring waves all around, no other sounds could be heard. You simply waved at Huo Shushu on the shore, then put on your bamboo hat and pushed off with the pole. The small bamboo raft swiftly made its way upstream through the surging waters of the Yellow River, and in the blink of an eye, your figure disappeared from the surface of the river, leaving Huo Shushu standing there in a daze, questioning everything. Although night had already fallen, quite a few fans had gathered at the spot where Wei Haotian had fallen into the water. They broke down in tears, throwing the chrysanthemums in their hands into the river. Among them was a fan with the online name No Cilantro, whose eyes were swollen from crying so much. "Tiantian, you have to take good care of yourself over there. Even though you can't stand on the stage you love most anymore, we still hope." But before he could finish, he suddenly saw a flash of white light streak across the river, like a shooting star. And then it quickly vanished. Many people present witnessed the scene. The crowd first fell silent, then erupted into a wave of intense sobbing. "It's Haotian. It must be him. Haotian can't bear to leave us either. He turned into a shooting star to come see us." The fans thought it was their idol who couldn't bear to leave them either. But if they knew that the fleeting figure they just saw was actually you, the very person they blamed for their idol's death, they'd probably tear your heart out on the spot. The so-called shooting star the fans spoke of was actually just the afterimage of the lantern on your bamboo raft. Traveling under the stars and moon, you returned to the old Taoist temple on the mountain above Qingquan Town, the place where you grew up after your rebirth. As soon as you entered, you saw the old Taoist priest under the tree. When he saw you return, he rushed over to you, excitedly asking, "Well, did she like you?" "Shoo, I've met that young lady before. She's got a top-notch personality. What a bargain for you, you little rascal." You immediately felt a rush of dark blood to your head, secretly grumbling to yourself, "Just how ugly must I look in the old man's eyes for him to say that?" When the old Taoist heard that you two had exchanged contact information and decided to start off as friends, he couldn't help but complain. "You young people are so wishy-washy, why not just settle things right away?" Grumbling as he spoke, he returned to his room, clearly displeased. You had only come up to report the situation to him, and after explaining, you prepared to head down the mountain. Now that you're an adult and haven't become a Taoist priest, you don't live at the temple anymore, but instead reside in Dahe village at the foot of the mountain. After all, you're a corpse retriever, so you inevitably have to deal with water and corpses, which isn't very convenient at the temple. Besides, it wouldn't look good either. Unlike your leisurely situation, things are in an uproar, online netizens are in frenzy. Originally, those fans wanted to dig up your identity, dox you, and then force you to give an explanation to their hype, but to their surprise, no matter how hard they searched, they couldn't find a single piece of information about you. This left everyone dumbfounded. If you had some kind of background, they wouldn't believe that someone making a living on the water in tattered clothes could have any connections. Yet the reality is, it's as if you appeared out of thin air, leaving no trace to be found. Even the heiress of Qiandu couldn't find any information about you. This is just too bizarre. How could it be that nothing at all can be found? Could he actually have some kind of powerful background? But how is that possible? If people with connections dress like that, I'd already be the richest person in the country. Is there no justice left? He watched someone die without helping, causing another's death, and yet he hasn't been arrested. Meanwhile, the building of Morning Star Entertainment, the agency Wei Haotian belongs to, is brightly lit. At this moment, quite a few fans are still gathered outside the company, holding signs and chanting slogans, demanding an explanation from Morning Star. Basically, they're accusing the company of inaction and calling for them to report the incident to the police. They want justice for their idol. Looking at the fans below, who seemed as if they were on steroids, CEO Chen Xing couldn't help but feel like his hair was about to fall out from stress. Right now, he was the very definition of being overwhelmed. After all, Wei Haotian had been developing rapidly in recent years and was practically the company's ace, carrying numerous endorsements and business deals. Now that he was gone, there was a huge mess waiting for him to clean up. He barely had time to deal with any of this. At that moment, his office door was knocked on, and his secretary walked in with a grim expression. "Boss, Wei Haotian's family is demanding 600 million in compensation from the company. Otherwise, they'll bring his body here to confront us." What they mean is that Haotian's popularity is worth exactly that much. What do you think we should do now? Hearing this, CEO Chen Xing instantly felt a surge of anger rise in his chest. 600 million? Those two old folks really know how to make outrageous demands. If I hadn't spent money to promote him, Wei Haotian would be nothing. And now, look at him, he managed to get himself killed, left behind a huge mess, and still wants compensation? It's already generous of me not to ask him for money. The more CEO Chen Xing thought about it, the more he couldn't swallow his anger. Go tell those two old folks not a single cent. Didn't they say they'd bring the body here to protest? Set up a morning hall for me right downstairs and let them cry all they want. Wei Haotian's parents never expected the company's attitude to be so tough. Wei Haotian's cousin and manager, Feng Mengmeng, also didn't expect the company to be so stingy. She gritted her teeth and said to Wei Haotian's parents, parents. Now that my cousin is gone, we definitely can't go head-to-head with the company. The only thing we can do is use his body to threaten him. Hearing this, a glint of greed flashed in the triangular eyes of Wei Haotian's father. No matter what, the person is already gone at this point. Money is what matters most. So he nodded without hesitation. After that, Feng Mengmeng found some pallbearers, preparing to load Wei Haotian's coffin onto a vehicle and take it to the company to demand money. At this moment, the whole family was dressed in mourning clothes, their eyes red from crying, looking utterly grief-stricken to anyone who saw them. Since quite a few fans had gathered outside, their actions quickly drew attention. To further build up their tragic image, Feng Mengmeng didn't forget to hint to the fans about the company's despicable behavior. Just then, several strong men carried the coffin out, and even some people who hadn't really supported Wei Haotian's cousin's actions before. The moment they saw the coffin, they instantly broke down in tears, each one crying out in grief, while the strong men carried the coffin expressionlessly toward the waiting hearse. But just then, a faint sound caught their attention, and they all stopped at the same time, exchanging wide-eyed glances. The man in front swallowed hard and said awkwardly, "You all heard that too, right?" The others silently nodded, their eyes filled with fear. Before anyone else could respond, Wei Haotian's cousin, seeing them stop, complained impatiently, "What's wrong? Why did you stop? Hurry up, we're running out of time." Even the fans by the company who had been crying stopped and all turned to look. The man who spoke first explained, "There was a noise from inside the coffin just now." As he spoke, he couldn't help but feel a chill down his spine, but Feng Mengmeng found it ridiculous. How could that be? The person's already gone. Maybe you just bumped into something, be more careful. The group exchanged glances. The sound just now, rather than a dull thud from bumping into something, sounded more like someone knocking on the coffin lid. "What are you all standing around for? Hurry up," Feng Mengmeng urged. The group thought it best to quickly lift the coffin onto the vehicle and leave this troublesome place as soon as possible. However, before they could take more than a couple of steps, the coffin suddenly began to shake violently, as if something inside was struggling to get out. Seeing this, the people around immediately let out terrified screams. The pallbearers' faces turned deathly pale, and they hurriedly dropped the coffin to the ground. "It's working! It's a corpse coming back to life!" The sudden commotion startled Wei Haotian's cousin and his parents as well. If the person in the coffin had only been in a state of suspended animation before, now for him to come back to life, that was absolutely impossible. His body was already stiff. How could he possibly come back to life? But then, what was happening now? At that moment, Feng Mengmeng's expression suddenly froze. He suddenly remembered the mysterious person who had pulled Wei Haotian out of the Yellow River. Before leaving, that person had told them to cremate the body as soon as possible, or else some kind of energy might enter the body and turn it into a zombie. At this point, Wei Haotian's cousin's face turned green. Normally, she would never believe such nonsense, but now, with the commotion coming from inside the coffin, he had no choice but to believe it. "Hurry up and get the coffin to the funeral home, quickly." Upon hearing this, Wei Haotian's parents immediately lowered their voices and said, "What are you doing? Don't you want the money?" The two of them were still thinking about that 600 million, but unexpectedly, Feng Mengmeng's eyes widened with rage as he growled in a low voice. 600 million? If you don't cremate him right now, your precious son is going to jump out, and when that happens, none of us will be able to escape. Before Feng Mengmeng could finish explaining to Wei Haotian's parents, the pallbearers refused to continue. "You'd better find someone else. We don't dare carry it anymore." As they spoke, the group wanted to leave this troublesome place as quickly as possible, but unexpectedly, at that moment, Feng Mengmeng shouted, 50,000! Get the coffin to the funeral home, and I'll give each of you 50,000. As the saying goes, money makes the mare go, and 50,000 per person was indeed very tempting. The group exchanged glances. Then, the leader gritted his teeth and agreed, "Let's do it." By this time, all the onlookers and fans nearby had already been scared off and had run away. Although they didn't really believe in things like corpses coming back to life, it still gave them the creeps, so they all disappeared without a trace. The group tied the coffin up tightly with ropes and lifted it. During this process, the coffin moved a few more times, and now even Wei Haotian's parents had no objections left. Immediately after, the corpse was taken to the funeral home. When the staff at the funeral home saw the coffin tied up so tightly, they couldn't help but frown. Before the body could be cremated, the identity of the deceased had to be confirmed, so without a second thought, the staff untied the ropes. The family members were asked to come forward to fill out the paperwork, and after verifying that it was indeed the deceased, the subsequent procedures would follow. Upon hearing this, the strong men exchanged nervous glances. None of them dared to step forward, and they all looked rather flustered. Seeing this, the staff immediately became alert, sensing that something was off. Feng Mengmeng hurriedly took off her sunglasses and stepped forward, but before she could say anything, the staff quickly backed away several steps and raised their voice, saying, "If you have something to say, just say it, don't come so close to me." The staff now found these people more and more suspicious, and for her own safety, she thought it best to keep her distance. Feng Mengmeng was immediately left feeling awkward, but before she could speak, the coffin placed to the side suddenly shook again. A series of banging noises instantly drew everyone's attention. The staff's eyes widened in shock, and she exclaimed in disbelief, "Could it be that there's a living person inside that coffin?" Seeing that the staff had misunderstood, Feng Mengmeng hurriedly shook her head and said, No, you got it wrong. There's no living person inside." As she said this, Feng Mengmeng paused for a moment. She still hadn't figured out how to explain the situation. After all, it was so unscientific that ordinary people simply wouldn't believe it. But she had personally prepared the coffin, and inside was only Wei Haotian's corpse, nothing else, and certainly no tricks. How was she supposed to explain that the corpse in the coffin might actually be a zombie? Just as the atmosphere was growing tense, a scruffy old man slowly walked over. "What going on?" Xiao Li, the staff member, turned his head at the sound. When he saw who it was, he couldn't help but be surprised. "Taoist Lao, what brings you here?" The old man before him was a longtime employee of the funeral home, having worked here for most of his life, but perhaps due to his age, his health had started to decline, so he hadn't come in for quite a while. "There was some trouble with the equipment, so I came to take a look." After saying this, he glanced at the coffin parked to the side and asked, "So, what's the matter here?" Hearing this, the staff member looked seriously at Feng Mengmeng and said, "Right, you better answer my question first, otherwise we can't proceed with the cremation. What exactly is going on with this coffin?" After saying this, Xiao Li turned to the old man again and said, "Taoist Lao, just now the coffin moved. It seemed like there was a living person inside." Hearing this, the old man instinctively raised his eyebrows, a look of curiosity appearing in his cloudy eyes. Seeing that she couldn't avoid it, Feng Mengmeng simply spoke up, "Do you know Wei Haotian? He's all over the internet right now." Xiao Li and the old man exchanged confused glances, not understanding why she brought this up, but still nodded and said, "We know. So what does this have to do with him?" Feng Mengmeng pointed at the coffin behind him. Inside is his body. Xiao Li was momentarily stunned, doubting his own ears, and only after a while did he speak in disbelief. "What? You're saying this is the body of that movie star Wei Haotian?" Of course, he had seen the news online, and knew that the actor Wei Haotian had died in an accidental drowning, but that news was just from today. Normally, unless there are special circumstances, after someone passes away, the body is kept in the mourning hall for 1 to 3 days for a farewell ceremony, especially for someone famous. This is taken even more seriously. How could the cremation be happening so so soon, and at their rather small funeral home no less. Seeing Xiao Li's disbelief, Feng Mengmeng quickly handed over her credentials. I'm his assistant, Feng Mengmeng. If you don't believe me, you can look it up online. While they were verifying her identity, Feng Mengmeng continued. We suspect that she has now turned into a zombie, so we have no choice but to cremate her as soon as possible. Upon hearing this, Xiao Li and Old Ren abruptly looked up, their faces full of disbelief. A zombie? Xiao Li didn't even bother to check his phone anymore, and immediately laughed. Are you kidding? This isn't a novel. Where would a zombie come from? You really? Xiao Li was about to say more, but Old Ren raised his hand to interrupt him. Compared to Xiao Li, Old Ren seemed much calmer. A pair of sharp, eagle-like eyes fixed intently on Feng Mengmeng. Why would you say that? Feng Mengmeng had no choice but to describe in detail what had just happened. But Old Ren truly lived up to his reputation as an old fox. He immediately seized on the key point in her story. So how did you immediately think she had turned into a zombie? Most people wouldn't jump to that conclusion. Faced with this question, Feng Mengmeng could only tell the truth, recounting everything that had happened by the Yellow River and the final words she had left them. After hearing the whole story, Xiao Li looked utterly shocked, as if he had just heard something unbelievable. In contrast, Old Ren remained much more composed. However, at that moment, Coffin began to shake again, this time even louder. The irregular knocking sounds didn't match the pattern of a living person struggling. The commotion instantly caused everyone present to change their expressions.